see it on the leaf symptoms. You see that top dieback, typical of a systemic bacterial disease. You see the lower yield and the lower test weight. $5 per bushel of costs that the consumer is paying this year for higher prices because of lower yields is from Goss's wilt on corn. Sudden death syndrome on soybean. About $3 of that increased cost is from the drought. The rest of it is from the increased susceptibility to this systemic vascular disease. You can see sudden death syndrome on soybeans. That's a field in Iowa. We asked the grower what he did different on one side of the field than the other to have extremely severe sudden death syndrome that's caused by fusarium. We've been on his farm looking at some varietal trials. He was concerned about Goss's wilt. Said he hadn't even noticed the fact that his soybeans on half the field were dying from sudden death syndrome. The others were very healthy. He said the only difference was he sprayed glyphosate to take out the alfalfa on the right side up there. The left side had been in sweet corn for 3 years, so it hadn't had any glyphosate on it. It's all Roundup Ready soybeans this year. The difference wasn't this year, but the difference that made sudden death syndrome so severe was because of that change in soil biology from the glyphosate that was applied the previous year. This field, down in the right-hand corner or left-hand corner for you, is a research field. That's at the agronomy farm. Not supposed to have differences like this. The site over here, you can see this little flag. Took us a little while to find it. When we were out, I was trying to help our breeder figure out what happened to his breeding plots. But on the left side, very severe take-all. You take the heads there and you roll them up in your hand and thresh them out, all you get's a bunch of shriveled kernels. You look at the roots and they're all black from take-all. You look over on the other side, thresh it out, and you have plump kernels. Look at the roots, and there's a little root nibbling here and there. Those two plots that you see up there that look like they're dead also are just early maturing. You can still thresh out the heads, and you've got good plump kernels. When we asked the farm superintendent why the difference, because this had been in the same crop, the same tillage, the same fertility for 30 years. Same fertilizer on the entire field. It's all Roundup Ready soybeans the previous year. It's supposed to be uniform for our research plots. We want to control our variability, our variables. He thought, our superintendent thought for a minute, and he said, well, I had a few weeds show up late on the soybeans on this end of the field, and I sent my crew out, told them to spray them with glyphosate. Put a flag down, said there's no need to spray the other half of the field. You can see the predisposition to this very serious soil-borne disease. You'll see the same thing with head scab. We've seen a major increase in our plant diseases as a result of that predisposition that glyphosate causes. If you look at glyphosate, it's been a very powerful herbicide. You can spray it on the plant. It's systemic. It moves throughout the plant, accumulates in the root tip, the shoot tip, reproductive structure, and in legume nodules. About 20% of it moves out in the root exudates into the soil. As it moves in the plant down into the root tissue, it shuts down all of the defense mechanisms to these soil-borne pathogens. Then as it moves out into the soil, it stimulates the virulence of the soil-borne pathogens like Fusarium and Rhizoctonia, Phytophthora and Pythium and Guanomyces and those organisms. But it is an extreme antibiotic, very lethal to your beneficial organisms like your mycorrhizae, like your natural biological control organisms, your bacillus, trichoderma, Pseudomonas, and those other organisms that we rely on for natural biological control. Can also accumulate in the soil because it's a very difficult compound to degrade. Half-life in a sandy, high water table soil may be 60 to 90 days. In a good clay loam, silt loam soil, it may be over 20 years. Dr. Hannah Mathers says that the accumulation of glyphosate in their ornamental plants costs Ohio horticulturalists $6.5 million a year in the bark cracking, and the winter kill, the sun scald, because it shuts down all of those defenses to those abiotic factors. Well, then you say we have genetically engineered crops that are resistant or tolerant of glyphosate. Doesn't it compensate for that damage? You have to remember, there's nothing in the genetic engineering technology that does anything to the glyphosate that's applied to the plant. All the technology does is insert a gene to compensate so that you can apply this chemical directly to the plant without killing it. It's still a chelator, still immobilizing nutrients, making them less efficient, less available, and it's still a very powerful antibiotic. The other thing that we see is that any time you disrupt the integrity of the genetic system, we have epigenetic effects. So that in the plant, we see that one of those epigenetic effects is that it reduces the efficiency of those genetically engineered plants to absorb or to take up those micronutrients that it has to have for its physiology. These are different university studies down at the bottom, just showing how that reduced efficiency is with various varieties of soybeans or corn hybrids. Do it with cotton, any of the others. You see a greatly reduced ability of those plants to work for you to get those nutrients, and also to use the nutrients physiologically in the plant. So we used to say, well, there's a yield drag. That yield drag, in Dr. Charles Benbrook's study, shows that with just having the gene present, cuts the yield as much as 12%. If we look at the varieties and hybrids, we see the reduced efficiency for the micronutrients reduced anywhere from 10 to 30%. And you can see the effect then of the gene in this particular hybrid that Zobioli was working with. You can see about a 17% reduction in uptake of manganese and about a 47% reduction in lower efficiency for uptake of zinc. Then when you add the glyphosate, that strong chelating chemical, then you see an additive reduction in the efficiency of those nutrients. So it is the Purdue Bulletin that came out a year ago said, we're we're seeing manganese deficiency in soybeans at levels that we used to consider twice the sufficiency range. Dr. Barney Gordon at Kansas showed takes 2.5 to 5 pounds of foliar applied manganese to bring a genetically engineered Roundup Ready soybean plant up to the same yield potential and efficiency for manganese that you have with its normal isogenic parent. There's a reduced efficiency. You see that effect on nitrogen fixation, the symbiotic relationships, rhizobium and bradyrhizobium, very sensitive to glyphosate. They have the shikimate pathway. You can see with Williams 82, that's the isogenic parent. Just putting the gene in reduces the efficiency of nutrients that those bacteria need to fix nitrogen, especially nickel and cobalt. Glyphosate's a powerful chelator. And then when you add the glyphosate, you further reduce that efficiency of those plants so they can't work as hard for you as they were genetically designed to do. It's not just the non-GMO plant, again, that has the effects or has a compromised nutrient efficiency. We see it reflected in Roundup Ready soybeans. You can see a reduced lignin. Lignin's a structural component. Excuse me, it keeps the plant sturdy and standing in the wind. You can see the effect on amino acids. That's why we're growing these plants as a protein source for our animals and also for us. They're nutrient compromised. Yield may be somewhat comparable, but the nutrient density is much lighter. And then for my neighbors in Idaho, where we rely on irrigation in those high desert soils, it takes twice as much water to grow a pound of dry matter in a Roundup Ready soybean plant as it does in a non-Roundup Ready or without the glyphosate. What happened in the Midwest? We had a serious drought this year. Tremendous damage. The damage was compounded by the drought, but we'd already reduced the efficiency by the glyphosate. Larry Purcell at Arkansas published on this 30 years ago. Said just with broadcast applications, we're seeing increased drought stress. You need to get your manganese level up. You need to make sure your other nutrients are there because the efficiency isn't the same.